Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound Podcast, a show where, as always, we're hitting you with them elbows of knowledge. And UFC Fight Night, Emmett taking on Vallejos is here. And as always, your boys here on the Ground and Pound Podcast are going to break the whole thing down, starting off in the early prelims, heading to the main event. And as always, I am joined by my co-host, Carlos. What's happening, Carlos?
Absolutely nothing, brother.
And we're going to dive right into the early prelims here. And let's get started with Andre Fili taking on Jose Delgado. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I'm going to have to go with Delgado. Fili had his time. Sometimes he looks sharp, sometimes he doesn't. And these are the points where he doesn't look too sharp, whereas Delgado has tight striking, mixes all of his weapons very well, very good on the ground. Can defend takedowns. He's the aggressor, but he's very tactical as he's coming forward. He doesn't get too wild, doesn't get crazy, doesn't get mixed up in exchanges. And I think the exchange is exactly what he needs to land something big. And if he's going to land something big, it's got to be in the first round when he's not when he's fresh and he hasn't gotten tired yet. So I think Delgado's going to take it. He's a tough kid. He can take a shot. He can give a shot. And I think he's just going to land more. And like I said, I think he's just way more well-rounded than Fili. And it's not that Fili doesn't know what to do in all aspects of the fight. He just doesn't handle getting hit well. He doesn't handle pressure well. So I got to take Delgado.
Yeah, it's really tough for me to kind of trust Andre Fili at this point in his career at 35 years old. Obviously, Team Alpha Male product. He is well-rounded, but he's one of these guys to me that's, kind of jack of all trades, master of none. He can strike with you on the feet. He can wrestle you. But ultimately, his chin, to me, is kind of fading at this point. Obviously, coming off the split decision victory over Christian Rodriguez, a guy that, in my opinion, is not necessarily built for this weight class. He's a little bit too small. And obviously, no shame in losing to Melquizael Costa. Obviously, a win over Cub Swanson doesn't do it for me in 2026. And I could go on and on and on here. But to me, we want to talk about the positives. And Jose Delgado, the guy, is a lightning quick striker, very nice time knees up the middle. And I think realistically on the feet, Jose Delgado should have all the success that he needs here. Good takedown defense as well, training over at MMA Lab. A guy that I really trust at this point. I think he's proven to me to be pretty high level. He's UFC, pretty competent at this point. And I just don't trust Fili at 35, to be honest with you. And I think if this is a back and forth striking affair, Jose Delgado can fight on the outside. He can trade in the pocket. If Fili does decide to mix in the grappling, I think Delgado is going to be able to defend the takedowns. I trust him to fight 5 rounds as well. And I think he can really mix up his weapons. He does a good job of being able to get you out of there, a natural finisher. And I just trust him at this point. So give me Jose Delgado here to get this one done. Fili can beat anybody at any point, so I don't want to necessarily sit here and say that he's washed. He has all the skills to beat a lot of people still inside the UFC and up-and-comers like Delgado, but until he puts it together on a consistent basis and shows that he can put all of his skills together like he did previously in his UFC tendency, I don't necessarily trust him, so give me Delgado here to get this one done. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Vallejos taking on Emmett. We've got Bolaji Oki taking on Manoel Sousa. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I'm going to go with Oki to get it done, but I think it's a very strange pick for me just because Sosa, I feel, is the more well-rounded out of the two. And, he looks the part. He's physical. He likes to come forward. And when he fought Christian Perez, who I feel is a little bit more accurate of a striker than Oki, and I think he's also more well-rounded. I think that he had Sosa hurt as well a few times. More accurate, but Sosa was able to pressure him, and by pressuring him, he was able to wear on his gas tank a little bit, and that also could have been part of the jitters with Christian Perez. But I also think just the pressure from Sosa was able to get him tired. He was able to capitalize later on in the fight. But Oki, he fights long, and you got to get through that reach, and he does have those snapping punches. And I'm hearing about the power that Oki's got, and I'm waiting to see it because I have seen him hurt people. You've seen him hurt people too with some straight punches. And he's yet to do it. I think he's just measuring it too much, and he just needs to let his hands go. So I think he's got some good takedown defense. I'm going to go with Oki to get it done, but like I said, not too confident about it. Sosa seems to be the more well-rounded of the two.
Yeah, I'm not super confident in this matchup either, and I'm usually the guy that's talking a lot of shit on the UFC debuts, and I'm usually fading them. But to be honest with you, Bolaji here is an instant fade for me. I have a tough time picking this kid. Obviously, Manuel Sousa coming off of the Dana White's Contender Series performance, where Christian Perez was able to out wrestle him for 2 rounds, a round and a half, and Sousa in that fight, they demonstrated that he's got some good skills on the ground. He does tend to kind of get taken down and controlled on the ground, but he does kind of fish for legs or, create scrambles to be able to get up. He is an absolute physical specimen as well. I'm really impressed with this guy's cardio base. He carries power late into the 3rd round. And if you go back and watch that Contender Series fight, the guy is able to really carry power late into the 3rd, which impressed me. And to me, Bolaji is really underperformed. They're selling this kid as this powerhouse, this great athlete. And so far, I'm kind of yet to see it, in my opinion. If you go back and look at the Timothy Kawamba fight, he's just jabbing the guy's face off. Split decision against Timothy Kawamba doesn't necessarily impress me. And if you look at skill for skill, I think Sousa is the harder hitter, the better athlete. I think out of the two, I would argue that he's probably more likely to get a takedown out of the two. And Bolaji not necessarily lived up to any hype, in my opinion. Sousa is a guy, brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and in Muay Thai. Oki is a guy that, when it comes to his training, all I really see is that jab that he pumps out in his fights. And you go back and look at the Mason Jones performance, his recent fight, obviously lost to Mason Jones with elbows from mount. I think Sousa here could definitely implement some grappling, get a takedown early, and ultimately, find a path to victory there on the ground. Oki, obviously, I trust his cardio as well. I don't necessarily think that he's got any cardio issues, but I think when you're taking a lot of damage from a guy that hits as hard as Sousa, I do think that will cause you to be gun shy. I think that will wear on the gas tank, especially when Sousa rips to the body. And I trust Manuel Sousa here to come in here and have a good performance. I don't necessarily trust what Oki is at this point, so give me Manuel Sousa to get this one done. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Vallejos taking on Emmett. We've got Lacerda taking on Hecher Sousa. Carlos, who you got in this one?
Sousa this one. I feel Sousa's the more well-rounded of the two. He's got more precision and striking. One thing I don't like too much is that he blades his body, and he just needs to be cautious of Lacerda throwing a heavy leg kick or tearing up that lead leg at some point. Other than that, I feel that he has the better wrestling. I think he has good top control. If I had tried to keep this one on the feet, I wouldn't want to play that ground game with Lacerda because that would give him an obvious chance to get this done as well in his favor. But I just think to be safe, keep it standing, and I think Sousa could get it done easier that way.
Yeah, 2 for Sousa here. Training partner of Ilia Topuria, and the striking is decent, but where I think he really wants to do his best work is get into the clinch and kind of take you down, get on top and land ground and pound. You saw that in his Contender Series fight. And to me, Lacerda, not UFC level. I'm not really impressed with this guy. He's supposed to be a jiu-jitsu wizard, and in his previous fight against Simon Oliveira, he wasn't necessarily one and done. I was expecting the fight to hit the mat, and ultimately a guy that's got 10 submission victories to be able to get this one to the ground and find the submission early. It took far too long, in my opinion, for a guy in Oliveira that is arguably one of the worst UFC fighters that was on the roster at the time. I'm pretty sure he's cut since then. And the only real concern here is that, for me, is that if Sousa does decide to get into the clinch and kind of play the jiu-jitsu game with Lacerda off of his back, I do think that's a world or a path to victory that Lacerda could definitely capitalize in. But if this one stays on the feet, I don't think the Muay Thai of Lacerda is going to be a factor here. I think Sousa's forward pressure's good. His boxing's decent enough. Obviously, working with Ilia Topuria on a regular basis definitely pays off. And I do think as well that this is going to come down to the fact that Lacerda, if he's playing jiu-jitsu off of his back, Sousa is a guy that looks to do a lot of damage. He's not playing jiu-jitsu when he's on top, in guard, in half guard. He's looking to beat you up with elbows. He's looking to slam you in the face with punches. And I think that Sousa's a guy that he knows where his bread is buttered. I could see him really just getting this fight to the ground in a dominant position and landing ground and pound. I could see Lacerda just being a guy that wants to get it to the ground because he knows that's his game, but ultimately getting beaten up and ground and pound TKO'd here. So give me Hecher Sousa to get this one done. I do think as well that on the feet, if it plays out that way where there's no grappling involved, I do think that Sousa is also the better striker. So I do think either way, Sousa should get this one done. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Vallejos taking on Emmett. We've got Charles Johnson taking on Bruno Silva. Carlos, battle of the 35-year-olds. Who's getting it done?
I'm going to go with Silva. I think he's just really fast. He's got fast hands, fast feet. He can get inside. He can He can do some work while he's in there, and I think he can slip a couple punches here and there from Johnson because Johnson, although he's not slow, he's a pretty good athlete. It's just when you extend on those punches, it leaves Silva a chance to come inside. But I just think Silva's fought the better competition, and I feel that Johnson, although he's getting better all the time, and he did just come off a bad loss, I just think that he's not on the level of Silva. Plain and simple. I don't think he's there. I gave him the benefit of the doubt over Alex Perez. Perez, I know he's more high level than that, but inactivity as opposed to Johnson, who was active and winning, I gave him the benefit of the doubt, and Perez just put him out. I had a feeling that would happen too. So I'm going to go with Silva to get it done. I just don't think Johnson's on his level.
Give me in a G, man. I'm going with Charles Johnson in this one. I think that height and reach is going to be too much for Silva. He's got a nice jab, good cardio, and good takedown defense. He can implement the wrestling if he wants to. Silva's no slouch, though. I do agree with Carlos. I think he's also a little bit underrated at this point. He has fought the higher level of competition, and he's struggled in that sense. And I think he is going to have the speed advantage here. He's good on the ground at scrambling, but I think Charles Johnson's going to be too big for him. That 5-inch height discrepancy here is going to be on display. I don't think Silva's going to be able to get it to the mat. I think on the feet, Charles is going to be able to fight on the outside and really just use his counters. And I think that serves him well. And I do think that Silva at 35, he's looked a little bit older at 35 than what Charles Johnson has at this point. Charles Johnson as well can be inconsistent at times. There's no doubt about that. He'll knock out a high level top guy and then all of a sudden kind of have a sloppy performance. But I do think that Silva has all the skills to be, still ranked, still a guy that can be live at any point. Good guillotines as well if Charles Johnson does decide to grapple. But I do think that height's going to make it very difficult for Silva to get the takedowns. And if it plays out on the feet, although Silva will have the speed discrepancy, I think Charles can pump the jab, tap the low kick, and ultimately win a decision here with volume and with his boxing. So give me Charles Johnson to get this one done. We'll have a bit of dissension here on the Ground and Pound podcast. It'll be interesting to see who we've got. And let us know in the comments as well who you guys have. Are you going with Silva? Are you going with Johnson? Let us know. We want to hear from you. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Vallejos taking on Emmett. We've got Sam Hughes taking on Piera Rodriguez. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I'm going to go with Rodriguez in this one. I don't see much of a difference from the first fight they had to this one. Rodriguez, she uses her jab very well. She mixes in takedowns, anything to slow down Sam Hughes, because whether Hughes is winning and landing or she's getting hit, she's coming forward no matter what. So you just have to do something to take her down. And then the ground control from Rodriguez was enough in the first round in the first fight to get her to control her a little bit within the rounds, because Hughes was coming forward, but she wasn't necessarily creating any damage on Rodriguez, whereas Rodriguez was landing clean. She did land some good combinations, and she was able to take her down and control her and land some shots down there. So I really don't see it being any difference, because Hughes, since she started to now, she's fought the exact same way. She's more pressure than anything, and if she's going to land, then she's going to win, and it's going to look dangerous because she's going to hit you with everything. But if she's just coming forward and just throwing, most likely they're going to go with the precision and the damage of someone like Rodriguez, and adding in some takedowns, making her have to be a little bit more defensive, anything to slow her down. I think that was a good game plan the first time, and I think it's going to work now. Rodriguez can mix in everything, so I think she gets it done.
Yeah, I think Piera Rodriguez here has to be the pick for me too. And this fight really just comes down to the fact that I think Rodriguez is a woman that can hurt you in multiple ways. She can choke you. She can beat you up on the feet. She's always looking for the finish. She's got 3-round cardio as well. And I think she's pretty well-rounded. And I think, to me, Sam Hughes, although obviously a good underdog, a woman that obviously comes in and she does cause a lot of upsets, to me, I look at her and I say, well, she gets beaten up early in the first, or she gives away the first round or two, and then she kind of surges back late in the third. Her cardio is a weapon. She's more of a volume puncher. If she can't out-wrestle you and choke you out, she's probably not going to be able to finish you. And I think Piera Rodriguez is live to get a finish, whether it be on the feet or on the ground. I think Hughes' wrestling is probably a little bit overrated and probably not the better wrestler in this matchup here. And I think Carlos is right. I don't see this one going any different to how they fought in the first fight. And to me, I think Piera Rodriguez can look at that fight ultimately and make some adjustments, maybe even get the finish on Sam Hughes. Sam Hughes is obviously finishing women women like Shauna Bannon, and I've been impressed with Rodriguez since she stepped into the UFC. I don't necessarily think, which Carlos highlighted, that Sam Hughes has got any better. I don't necessarily think that she's changed her game up and added new skills, or she's always trying to beat you with cardio and volume, and I just don't think that's going to be anything that's, Piera Rodriguez hasn't seen in previous matchups or in their previous fight. So give me Piera Rodriguez here to get this one done. I think that she might even get a TKO stoppage here on the feet. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Vallejos taking on Emmett. We've got Marwan Rahiki taking on Harry Hardwick. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I'm going to go with Rahiki in this one. He just seems to be very physical. He's very technical as a fighter. He seems very comfortable on his feet as well in most positions that he's in, whether it's standing or on the ground. Technically, when it comes to wrestling, he's able to get back to his feet. I haven't seen anybody just hold him down, but he doesn't just explode up. He actually uses his technical stand-up to get back to his feet. And that just lets me know that he has the ability to do that. And against somebody like Hardwick, it's hard to judge because he came in, fought a guy a weight class up, and he fought, I think it was Kawi Fernandez, and that guy he's a killer. He's going to beat your legs up. He's going to beat you up and bruise you, and he finished him. And it's not the fact that Hardwick isn't very good. He is well-rounded. He's a very good fighter. He just got battered by a guy in a much bigger weight class, and who's a monster in that weight class as well, and he's an up-and-comer. So I'm going to go with Rahiki because I think that he could do the same on the feet. It's going to be up to him to stop Hardwick wanting to take him down, but I also notice in a lot of Hardwick's fights, he'd rather stand than go to the ground, so he lacks in a little bit of wrestling as well, getting guys to the ground. So I'm going to favor Rahiki in this one, but because I don't know too much about Hardwick, even watching his fights and stuff, it's a little hard to tell. If it stays standing, Rahiki. If it goes to the ground, I don't know what Hardwick has, but I think Rahiki can get back to his feet. I think he can get out of bad situations, and I think he can get it done.
Yeah, we're cheating off the same test here, in my opinion. I see it the same way. I think if Hardwick gets this one to the mat, I definitely think he can have success, but I agree. I think he lacks in the wrestling. And I share the same sentiments Carlos does. His loss to Fernandez is no shame in that. He got his legs chewed up by a guy that's renowned for the calf kicks, and I think Fernandez is a real problem. We're both very high on him. But ultimately, when you look at this fight here with Rahiki, obviously, again, UFC debut, coming off Dana White's Contender Series. He did get clocked in his Dana White's Contender Series debut, and he had to kind of weather a storm and come back. And he looked pretty impressive, in my opinion, for a 23-year-old. He's got very nice, slick striking. And one of the things that I really like about Rahiki as well is that he has that nice sort of over-the-top elbow that he likes to throw in the strikes. So he's got you backed up against the fence. He lands that shot beautifully, nice timed knees, and he's very measured on the feet. And he's got kind of a lot of competency on the feet for a 23-year-old. He's not necessarily coming in, when he sees you hurt, he's not kind of overzealous. He's very measured on the feet, which I like. Good takedown defense as well. But I do think that Hardwick here could definitely come in and ultimately use some grappling. But I think realistically we're going to see Rahiki really just use his striking, measured pressure as well, and really just beat Hardwick to the punch on the feet, all pun intended. And I think realistically that when you look at Hardwick's fights, that he's a little bit plodding, he's a little bit unathletic, and I think Rahiki's going to have the speed advantage here on the feet. So I like him to get it done. I don't necessarily think that he'll find the finish. I do think this will be a back and forth moments where Hardwick does kind of show, his, kind of experience here, but I do think that Rahiki should ultimately get this one done on the feet, probably by unanimous decision. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Vallejos taking on Emmett. We've got Mesquita taking on Montserrat Rendon. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I'm going to go with Mesquita to get it done, but, Rendon, she's the taller fighter, fights longer. Not very good at striking, but, Mesquita's worse. She does pressure you on the feet, so Mesquita is going to have to, keep her distance unless she's ready to engage, which most of the time when she's ready to engage, it's to try to get the takedown. And Rendon doesn't have big power, but she will just keep coming forward against somebody like Mesquita, who will probably just keep backing up. But what I do think is that Mesquita, if she can at least get this fight to the ground once or twice, just pressure, bulldog her up against the cage and just get her down, just use pressure, use persistence. She doesn't have great wrestling to get it down. That's the issue. And if she could do that at least once, ground pound pretty nasty. And her jiu-jitsu obviously is very credentialed. Now, Rendon, she does have a good ground game as well, but Mesquita is very much more credentialed, and she does bring a lot of power on the ground. She loves to beat up girls on the ground to get to the submission. So I would say Mesquita. I'm going to go with it. And like I said, it's too early to tell, but against Rendon, I think she's going to have the advantage. Who you got in this one?
Yeah, I'm going Mesquita here, but probably my least, confident pick on this entire card. Rendon, flat-footed, not known for the striking, not known for the grappling. She'll clinch you and ultimately just, stomp on your feet and just make fights a little bit grimy. I think she needs to stay out of the clinch here against Mesquita. It's just going to open up opportunities for her to get the fight to the mat. Mesquita obviously credentialed in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We know that. I think she's a tough girl. I will say that when you watch tape on her, even at 6-0, the fights that you can watch, she is always coming forward. She's always pushing a pace. She's always trying to make it dirty. She wants to be able to get the fight to the mat, but she doesn't have the wrestling to do so. And I think Rendon, like Carlos mentioned, has the height, has the reach. And I think she's going to, kind of struggle to get Rendon to the mat. So I think what we're going to have here is a shitty, apex, sloppy fight here. Absolutely no money on this one. If you're touching this one with any money, I would probably say Rendon plus 3.5. I don't really like this fight from a whole perspective, but I can trust Montserrat to be, at least in the fight at this point, to at least win a round. But I do think that Mesquita here is going to just keep pressuring forward, keep looking for the takedowns, and ultimately I think she might end up getting it at some point where she can get her jiu-jitsu going, but not confident. So I will say give me Mesquita here to get the grappling going, but I wouldn't even be surprised if it ends up being a back and forth, kind of striking affair. Both women suck on the feet, and I think that Mesquita might just be the one pressuring forward and ultimately get the decision based on aggression. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Vallejos taking on Emmett. We've got Elijah Smith taking on Su Young Yu. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I'm going to go with Smith in this one. I think he's got the reach advantage. I think he fights long. He's, he can cause a lot of problems for you just based on that. And Smith is also very composed, and he doesn't overextend for any reason. Even when he has his opponents hurt in the fight, he brings his whole body towards him. He doesn't just reach out and throw wild strikes. He's very composed. And somebody like you, he kind of needs you to overextend and get you to reach to try to get a shot in, to get you down. But Smith, he's patient. He waits for the openings. He doesn't force anything. I got to say I'm going to take him in this one.
Yeah, 2 for Elijah Smith here. I think realistically this fight just comes down to the fact that I don't think that Hughes going to be able to get his wrestling going. He likes to come out. He likes to back you up against the fence with his boxing. Not really known for his power, but he just wants to get your guard up so that he can level change, get underneath, get to your hips, and ultimately take you down. And I think Elijah Smith's takedown defense is more than enough. I think he's a great athlete. He can fight on the outside. Nice jab, nice boxing, nice teeps up the middle as well. And I think ultimately Elijah Smith hasn't necessarily shown to me that he's anything special, but I think he has all the skill sets here to be able to beat you. And I think realistically as well, the height and reach for Elijah Smith is going to play a factor, especially in the striking. You is going to be looking to level change. Smith's going to be throwing uppercuts. He's going to be paying the price of admission every time he wants to collide into the pocket here with Smith. And I think realistically that Smith is, as the fight goes on, he's going to build in confidence. He's going to be able to pepper you with the jab. And ultimately, I think he's going to win a unanimous decision here. I do think that Yu is a decent fighter. I do think that his cardio and his wrestling is definitely a formidable skill set, but I just don't think he's going to be able to take Elijah Smith down consistently, hold him down and beat him up and do any ground and pound, because I think Elijah Smith's just going to be too slippery for him to be able to get a hold of. I think as well with Elijah Smith, he showed in his last fight that when he is in the triangle, he was able to slam his opponent. So obviously he knows that that's something that he's capable of doing. He's now done it inside the cage. He's built that confidence to be able to, kind of use it as a weapon almost. And I do think that Yu has to be, mindful of the fact that Elijah Smith's takedown defense is good, and he needs to be able to work on his striking here. But I think Smith's going to be too fast, too athletic, too long as well in the reach. So ultimately, give me Elijah Smith here to get this one done on the feet. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Vallejos taking on Emmett. We've got Eryk, your boy, Anders taking on Brad Tavares. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I'm going to go with Tavares in this one. It's a pretty even fight. Tough to call because both guys are win one, lose one, win one, lose two. You know what I mean? That's the type of fighters they are. And I just feel Tavares is a little bit more technical in the striking, and he's got very good takedown defense. Anders, he does have a ground game, but has really no means to get it there. And he's willing to throw at times. And, late in fights is usually when Tavares ends up getting rocked. But I don't feel that Anders, even late in the fight, even though he's game, he's going to come forward. He's going to try to press him. I don't think he's got the skill to come forward and just land something on Tavares. Most of the times where he gets tagged late, it's usually with somebody that's got a little bit of credential striking. Anders is a little bit more of a brawler when it comes to striking. So I'm going to go with Tavares. I think he can get this done.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Tavares as well here. In my opinion, we're not getting the best Brad Tavares that you've seen throughout his career. Obviously, at 38 years old, both gentlemen, without being rude, because I like both fighters, but they are over the hill. Let's face facts. And I agree with Carlos. I think Anders is a guy that wants to look to get the fight to the mat. He's known as being a grappler, and he's not necessarily all that credentialed on the feet. Good athlete out of Alabama, Division I American football player. But Tavares is a guy that I think picked up the sport a little bit sooner than Anders, and it shows, especially in the striking. His boxing's much improved in comparison to what he's done in the past. And I think realistically that he can fight this one on the feet. He can fight this one on the ground and stay safe, but I think it's realistically going to pay out on the feet. I think Tavares is a guy that's going to pump the jab. He's going to land the right hand when he wants to. And I think Anders realistically is a good athlete and he's got good grappling, but ultimately he's not going to be able to get the fight to the mat. Tavares' takedown defense is almost legendary at this point. He does a good job of fighting for underhooks, keeping fights standing where he can have success. And I think Anders, you look at that head kick knockout that he was able to get. I think that's just a matter of, I don't want to say more luck than judgment, but I don't think he's landing anything spectacular like that on Tavares. Although Tavares has looked, not necessarily at his best recently, I do think that he should be able to get this one done here. Out volume Anders. I think this one goes to the judges' scorecards, keeping it on the feet and ultimately winning a decision here. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Emmett taking on Vallejos. We've got Vitor Petrino taking on Steven Asplund. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I'm going to go Petrino in this one. I got to go Petrino because, he's just a better athlete. He's a big guy. He's very strong. He's athletic. He's quick. He's explosive, and he's not going to have an issue taking Asplund down. You know what I mean? He's going to be able to lift him and dump him down. Asplund on his back, it's going to be a problem for him getting back up. Unless he's up against the cage, he might have a chance to use that to get back up. But striking wise, I do feel that Petrino needs to be a little cautious. He may be the quicker guy to the target, but Asplund, he's a heavy hitter. He may not be able to put you out with one shot, or maybe he will, depending on where he lands it. But he's going to hurt you if he hits you because he does have heavy power, and you've seen it in his fights where he's engaging with guys and he's touching them up, and there's a physical reaction that's happening against some tough guys. So I'm going to go with Petrino. I think he's going to throw some strikes, get it to the ground, and probably just dominate him from there, whether it's submission or ground and pound. But I don't think standing right in front of Asplund is going to be a good idea for Petrino, even though he's built like a fucking monster at heavyweight. But Asplund's a monster too. He's just not ripped. He's just a very big guy, and he's got very heavy power. And I'm going to go with Petrino. He's got a little bit more experience, a little bit more skill, fought better opponents. Petrino, let's get it done.
Yeah, 2 for Petrino here. I think it's got to be Petrino early, or it might get a little bit messy, but I do think he's going to be able to get this one done early in the first. I think he's got the athleticism advantage here, and I think that he knows at heavyweight he can kind of blitz his opponents, come in, shoot for the legs, get the takedown, get on top and beat you up. I do think he's going to be able to get Asplund down early here. Even though at 6'5", he should have a little bit of a size advantage. I don't think it's really going to play too much of a factor. Petrino, obviously, we know he's necessarily a good athlete. He's obviously very physically strong, but he's not necessarily that fundamental on the feet, and that's where I think it could get a little bit tricky, especially if he doesn't get Asplund out of there in the first round with his grappling. And I do think that's going to happen, but if he doesn't, might want to put a little bit of a live bet here on Asplund. I think the volume in the punching, he's more fundamental in the striking, and I do think ultimately this one plays out where if Petrino does get tired, especially from grappling early in the first, you might see him struggle to get the takedowns late in this or in the second round, and Asplund's able to kind of win the second and third round with his boxing. But I don't think think that's going to happen. I think Petrino's going to be able to get the fight to the mat, ultimately land some ground and pound, and maybe soften him up for a submission. I'm going to say head and arm choke, but give me Vitor Petrino here to get this one done. Really just being a brute and out-muscling his opponent early in the first. And I do think that Asplund's a nice addition to the heavyweight division. He does have good boxing and nice low kicks, but ultimately I think Petrino is a big step up in competition, and I think he's going to be able to get this one done with the wrestling. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Vallejos taking on Emmett. We've got Myktybek Orolbai taking on Chris Curtis, the action man. Carlos, who you got in this one?
Oh, man, I want to take the action man, obviously, but I'm going to go with Orolbai. I feel that this fight can be a bit like Orolbai versus Rebecki, just not as bloody and not as violent looking. I just think that Curtis is probably going to land, the jab out there, obviously, and he's going to land his 1-2s pretty good. But he doesn't mix up too much, but he does have good takedown defense. Orolbai, he's going to mix everything. He's going to throw kicks. He's going to throw punches. He's going to start trying to go for takedowns. And I think just the volume of offense coming at him, Orolbai is going to be relentless. And I think he's going to come after him. Is he going to get the takedown? I don't know. But even if he doesn't get the takedown, he's not out of the fight. You know what I mean? Orolbai he's pretty skilled standing up. Now, is his boxing as sharp as Curtis? No. But I think he's going to mix in a few more strikes, a few more different type of weapons, in there, so that it keeps Chris Curtis having to shell up a little bit more, because he will stay defensive if there's a lot thrown at him. And that's something that happens to him a lot, where sometimes you pressure him, he's worried about the takedown, he's going to try to defend that more. And offensively, if you're throwing a little bit more at him, he tries to shell up a little bit more and check kicks. And he doesn't worry about offense too much. So I'm going to go with Orolbai to get this one done.
Yeah, 2-4 Orolbai here. It's tough not to pick the action man. Obviously, a guy that I'm pretty high on, and I do think that the Fili shell and the way that he rolls with punches is very nice. Obviously, former training partner of Sean Strickland, and great takedown defense as well, immaculate takedown defense. And I do think that Orolbai here is going to be best served to mix in some grappling, but I think realistically this one's going to play out on the feet. I think Orolbai is more well-rounded. He mixes in kicks very well. Obviously, know that he can push a pace as well in this, and when you see the what's the Rombecki fight? Obviously, he was able to still go hard late into that fight. Very, very tough. And the guy is well-rounded overall, and I do think that he can mix in his weapons here, especially the kicks at range. Like Carlos mentioned, I do think that's going to cause Action Man to shell up. I do think that Chris can, use his boxing to kind of counter both guys, similar height, similar reach. So neither guy is necessarily going to have the overall advantages in the height and reach department, but I do think that Orolbai can pick and prod at range with the kicks. If he wants to kind of level change and ultimately fake the takedowns to come upstairs with the hands, I think that'll be a good game plan as well. And I do think here that Chris Curtis, we might be seeing, unfortunately, his demise. I think we're seeing him at this point kind of slow down a little bit. He's, kind of been the same guy throughout the course of his career and his tendency now in the UFC. He does carry power, but I think Orolbai has shown a willingness to engage in the pocket, to kind of give one to get one. And I do think that he can definitely, he has a beard on him, as Carlos likes to say, so I do think that he's going to be able to take Curtis's best shot. So give me Myktybek Orolbai here to get this one done. Kind of just being more well-rounded overall here inside the cage. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Vallejos taking on Emmett. We've got Oumar Sy taking on Ion Cutelaba. Carlos, who are you going with this one?
I'm going to go with C in this one. For a guy that height, that size, the way that he has his one loss wasn't really that, he gave too much respect to his opponent in that. And I hope he doesn't do that. Cutelaba's trying to get to the ground. And I think the only thing he's got is, besides the overhand right, is just swing wild. And Cutelaba is down to do that. And I think he can nullify Cutelaba's striking with his reach and that height and just the athleticism to keep jabbing and moving, just stay long and move, which is going to force Cutelaba to have to try to get this to the ground. So he's going to try to dart in for a takedown or get you up against the cage, smother you, and try to get you down. And I think C's got enough wrestling to nullify that. I think he can keep him. I think he can stay off the mat. So I'm going to say that C gets this done. It's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be a great fight. I think it might be just about as good as when he fought, what was that guy's name again that I'm trying to remember? That's right, Manoel. And that was kind of a stinker. So I think that it's going to kind of be like that, but I think C gets the best in this one.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Cutelaba. I like the antics. I like the Hulk face paint, but give me C here. I think Carlos hit the nail on the head when he talked about the height, the reach, and obviously the grappling in the back pocket of Oumar Sy. Cutelaba is known for his sambo background, and I think he doesn't utilize that enough, especially in the cage. And I think realistically here that C's height and reach advantage is going to give him a problem in the striking. He's going to struggle to get on the inside. C's going to poke and prod at him from range with his long-range weapons. And I think that Cutelaba is going to look to try to get on the inside and kind of get to the clinch, but I think C has enough grappling, especially in the wrestling department, to he can get his own takedowns. And I think once he gets on top, he does a good job of being able to control his opponents. That 6'4" frame, 83-inch reach. I think it's definitely going to be served on the ground. He does a good job of being able to take the back and find the rear naked choke. And I think that Cutelaba here, he's just way past his prime, even at 32, in my opinion. I think C is inconsistent, and I think he's still got a lot to learn, but I don't necessarily trust Cutelaba. Sometimes he likes to get into wild brawls and kind of put on a show for the fans. In the next fight, he wants to use his grappling and get back in the win column and control you on the ground. I think he slows down as fights go long, especially into the third round, whereas I think C can pace himself. And I think here realistically in the striking, I think that C is going to be able to carry his power late into the third. I think that he trusts himself a little bit more on the feet, and I think if it comes to the grappling, I think that C knows that he can dominate Cutelaba, especially if he gets on top. So give me Oumar Sy to get this one done with the grappling. And I think that they will play it out on the feet at some points, but I think that Cutelaba here is just going to cause collisions and ultimately try to get on the inside and force the clinch. But I think C's going to be able to have enough to keep this one where he wants it. So give me Oumar Sy to get this one done. And that brings us to the co-main event here for UFC Fight Night. Vallejos taking on Emmett. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button as Carlos is going to break down Amanda Lemos taking on Jillian Robertson. Carlos, who you got in this one?
It's going to go with Jillian Robertson. She's tough. She's strong. She's a strong grappler. She's pretty relentless when she wants those takedowns. Sometimes they're not pretty, but she gets them because of the constant pursuit of it. She'll attempt to pull guard too in different ways if she can. Anything just to get her opponent to the mat because her ground and pound is nasty and her submissions are dangerous. And Lemos, she's actually slow enough, in my opinion. Slow is a nice way of saying not that bright. She'll probably, if she's in a clinch and she sees Jillian Roberts' neck, and I've seen it before, she'll jump for the guillotine, and she will allow Robertson to get the position that she wants. And sometimes I've seen her do that against girls that are good grapplers, and I just wonder why, because she needs to stay on her feet, she needs to create distance, and, she just gives them the fight. And I feel at some point in the fight, Robertson's going to probably just get into her hips and probably bait her to go for a guillotine, and she's going to do it. And that's probably how she's going to get the takedown. So I'm going to take Robertson to get it done.
Yeah, I could literally see it now, to be honest with you. You painted a good picture there. Lemos jumping guillotine, and they just play that meme, dumb ways to die. I pretty much agree with you here. I think Jillian Robertson is going to be able to do whatever she wants. It's only going to take one takedown. And I have an expression here on the channel with certain fighters that, have terrible takedown defense, and once you take them down, it's that they have the game plan of the floor is made of lava. And unfortunately for Lemos, that she does carry power. She does have some submissions in her back pocket, but once this fight hits the mat, it's going to be all over. I think Jillian Robertson has shown improvements, 30 years old. She's been around for a long time, and I think a lot of people have shit on her game and obviously known her as more of a jiu-jitsu practitioner and not necessarily known for the striking and the wrestling. But over at the Goat Shed, she's shown improvements. She's shown an ability to be able to, push a pace, grapple for 3 rounds. And one of the things I do like about her as well, when she gets to the ground, she wants to be able to land elbows, land big shots, beat girls up, and then look for the submission. She's not looking to play just jiu-jitsu. I think she's shown improvements from fight to fight, and I think Lemos is a woman that you know what you're going to get. She's got the right hand, she's got the power, and that's it. You take her down, terrible takedown defense. It should just be Jillian Roberts all day here, getting the finish on the ground, whether it be club and sub or just straight up ground and pound. Jillian Roberts here in the co-main event, confident pick from me. And that brings us to the main event here for UFC Fight Night. Vallejos taking on Emmett, and we've got Josh Emmett taking on Kevin Vallejos. Carlos, who you got in this one?
Obviously, I'm going to go with Vallejos to get this one done. He's young, he's tough, he's durable, solid wrestling, good striking, good technique all overall. I don't know. He's got a tight, high guard, and he's just very smart in how he approaches his opponent. And he likes to set traps. He likes to, besides setting a few traps, that's not what makes him good. He just comes forward, he brings the fight to you, but he doesn't necessarily get hit all the time. You know what I mean? He usually rolls with some punches, he moves out of the way of some, and with the high guard, he tries to take him on the arms and the shoulders. And when it comes to Emmett, I think we've discussed this before. Is Emmett's a one-trick pony? If he can hit you with that punch, he's gonna put your lights out and it's over. But how many times has he actually done that? And the reason being is he's not accurate. He has to swing wide and he has to swing wild to generate that power. And yes, he could do it in the later rounds as well. He can still swing hard, but he's just going on guts at that point. You know what I mean? His cardio's already shot. He's just winging punches, and if it lands, it lands. He doesn't have the precision to land on someone like Vallejos. He can't come down the middle. He can't come just over the guard, just around the guard. I mean, doesn't know how to work the body. Everything's head hunting. And his wrestling is, for somebody that trains a team alpha male, he's lacking in that department as well. It tends to get sub when he gets down against certain opponents. And even, I think he got subbed by Yair Rodriguez, somebody who's not even known for his ground game. So I just got to go with Vallejos. I think he's going to get it done. I don't think it's going to be easy. Emmett never makes it easy, but I think he's just probably going to beat the decision out of him.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Vallejos here all the way for me. I don't trust Josh Emmett at this point in his career. 40 years old, no thank you, not at 145. And I think we're seeing the decline in this guy. Like Carlos mentioned, obviously him getting subbed from Rodriguez, not something I'm really that high on. It's definitely not something I'm rushing to the window to bet in terms of Emmett. And like Carlos said, you know, he does tend to swing wild. People talk about his power, but he doesn't know how to set up his shots. And I think Vallejos has got much better footwork. He's a much better athlete, 24 years old. I think the cardio serves him well as well. And I think that Emmett as well, he's at this point in his career where you can see that he's just relying on that one shot and that one big right hand. And outside of that, I think Vallejos is better everywhere. I think if he wants to mix in the grappling and kind of clinch and take away that power, he definitely can. And I think ultimately here, Vallejos all the way for me. I think realistically, Emmett is past his prime. I think he's a name to put on Vallejos' record. And I think the UFC is doing what they always do. They're giving a young, upcoming guy that they're very high on. They're giving him a name on his record that they know that he should be able to beat. That's why it's the main event here. I think the only thing that's growing in Emmett's career is his beard at this point. So give me Kevin Vallejos to get this one done in the main event. And if Carlos, if he's free, if he's available right now, I'd like you to let him know what they need to do if they enjoy the content.
Guys, if you enjoy the content, and I hope you do, please don't forget to like and subscribe. We enjoy doing this all the time. We hope you enjoyed listening, and we'll catch you on the next one, guys.
Thank you, brother. And we'll catch you guys on the next one. Hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.